Welcome to 20Convey's latest webinar. Today we're going to be looking at the best ways for a conveyancer to acquire new business. And I'm delighted to introduce you to a star-studded panel. I'll start with Richard Hinton. So Richard, owner of Pitsford Consulting and 20Convey as well. Hi, Richard.
Yeah, morning, Paul.
We've got Clare Yates, trainer extraordinaire, who specialises in winning business for new law firms. So hopefully you know what you're talking about today.
Yeah, hopefully.
And Simon Fuller, who's sales manager for Mayo Wynne Baxter, a really successful law firm in the southeast. Welcome, Simon.
Hello, Paul.
So let's go straight into it, shall we? So just really quickly with the market, I think we're recording this end of July, 3 weeks after the general election. I think from the data we see, it's business as usual in terms of the market. And I think this year, generally, the market's been okay. That's the general feel, and definitely better than last year. So Richard, perhaps just turning to you first, where should a conveyancer, in your view, look for work in this kind of market? Just perhaps give a bit of an overview.
Well, as you say, Paul, I think it is a healthy market. I mean, Some of our clients are just about now talking about it sort of tailing off a little bit, but it's a seasonal market as well. So kids are on holiday, so the market's going to slow down a little bit. But it's a good time for firms to be thinking about their marketing. There are some traditional ways that they should be doing it. Obviously, there's the opportunity to get introduced business from panels, from estate agents, from other suppliers of work. And then there's the more direct route where you go feed yourself and acquire the business directly. I think that some firms paddle both canoes. Others focus on one or other of the two. I'd be interested in what other people think about the mix of the two, whether or not the introduced business, which has been with us ever since referral fees, or indeed before referral fees became a thing, is something we should be pursuing going forwards. How healthy is it as a model? I think I'd question.
Yeah. So Simon, let's perhaps go to you then. So in terms of introduced business, what do you do as a firm, and where do you see the benefits?
So a colleague and I run the kind of estate agency introducer model. We'll pay a small fee generally, kind of try and balance a decent service against a reasonable fee, and that brings business directly to us, where we're then invited to contact potential clients. We have to win the business ourselves, and we're not asking agents to onboard clients for us. We're sort of managing the process from quoting to doing the onboarding. And we've also got a new inquiries team, which is more for I guess you'd call them sort of cold inquiries, someone that might be ringing around for quotes. And the new inquiries team will provide the estimates, do the follow-ups, for the estimates provided, and then ask another department to do the onboarding there. So we've got those two channels. I think, interestingly, what Richard said there about the internal model of referrals between departments, we've another part of our business is a law firm in London and the southeast called Shakespeare Martineau. They're very much focusing on improving their kind of internal systems and really just trying to get a lot of their work from their own departments. They're making good strides there.
Great. And Claire, as a trainer, I know you speak to lots of law firms. Perhaps focusing on the estate agency relationships, I suppose you've seen that work really well, and perhaps less so. Are there any traits to make that work, or if I'm a law firm, what should I be looking for?
I think you need to train your estate agent to refer in a way that helps you both. So I actually do run a training course for lawyers on affectionately sort of how to train the estate agent. What does a good referral look like? There are some agents that are really lazy and just go, you can call. And others that will say, this firm are brilliant, let me tee a call up for you. I think it's really important that the client understands why the agent recommends the law firm. It couldn't just be our partner law firm, it should be, we think they're brilliant because. And as much as you can do to pass that on, a bit like running the first 100 metres. So when you pass the baton to the estate agent, you say straight away, this is Paul, this is what his situation is. He's looking for a law firm to do this, and I've told him you can help him. So that it's a really neat referral, and the client sees a professional handover one to the other.
Yep. And Richard, there's ways, without plugging TwentyConvey services, there's ways TwentyConvey can help in identifying the right partners to be partnering with and looking at the volumes. Isn't there?
No, I think that's right. I mean, I think if you go down the sort of the introduced model, then you're surrendering control in return for instructions arriving in your lap in various different ways. I think if you are interested in taking control of the channel of new business coming into your business, then I think instinctively that feels a lot healthier to me, to be honest. But then it's an extraordinarily difficult thing for law firms to do. As we all know, the home owning life cycle is so long that for a law firm to stay in touch with their clients over that period, 10, 15, 20 years, is just it's unreasonable, it's unfeasible, it's very difficult to do. So that said, I think client retention is something which firms could and should work towards. And it's you're right that the TwentyConvey plug is there, because what we do with our alerts is that we let law firms know when a property that we know they last bought has just come back on the market. So we treat it as a nudge. So we're saying it's effectively it's about outsourcing your client retention. So we're saying that the property that you bought 6 or 7 years ago has just come back on the market. If you retrieve your purchase file and make contact with your former client, then that's a warm prospect. And it's just a really nice way of just pulling through or helping law firms develop that client retention piece.
Yeah, and just regarding the alerts, I'm always amazed that law firms don't kind of convert more of those. But I suppose there's a knack to contacting previous clients, especially if they last kind of sold 8-9 years ago, and it was a long time ago. There's a stat in the estate agency world that I think only 15% of buyers of clients go back to their previous estate agent. So in the estate agency world, there's no kind of loyalty, and I think people struggle to even remember who they bought from, and it's because they haven't really stayed in touch over that time. So are there any kind of tips for conveyancers in how to stay in touch over that time so it's not a kind of cold call out the blue again?
Well, funny enough, this is a very hot topic at the moment. I actually think that for the law firms that offer multiple services, that they should see this as an opportunity to stay in touch as the client's solicitor for life. And so it shouldn't just be about, so are you thinking of moving? Because that could be a 7-year conversation or a 2-year conversation. But I do think staying in touch and offering value-led services such as a will and an LPA to clients who've purchased property helps. You have to talk about that conversation. In my experience, solicitors are terribly polite people and they don't like to push. So you need a dedicated team that are very good at building relationships and building rapport with people so that they can have that conversation without fear of upsetting them or offending them by being pushy or salesy.
I think you're exactly right. So just using me as an example. So I bought a property a couple of years ago. I'm getting on a bit, me and my wife. And we've actually been discussing getting a will because we don't have a will and we should. We've got 2 young kids. And I don't know where to begin. I don't know any companies. Whereas actually if the conveyancer I used sent me a leaflet through the door, wrote to me, called me, I'm in the market for that. And we are talking. So I think it's a really, really good point because I'm a good example of that. I am in that market now. And obviously when we move, if they do a good job, I'm more likely to use them.
I think Simon would also agree that the marketing is directed to win the conveyancing as the first entry to law. But it's always with the intention, unless you are a volume conveyancing warehouse, that you are going to hopefully win further business from that client as they go through life. So it just makes sense to try and talk to them about that.
I mean, we definitely see conveyancing as a kind of gateway to the firm with a view to having a client for life. And, there are all sorts of systems you can put in place to make sure that people get offered at least a will. And I think you're right, it's not about maybe every solicitor promoting the service, but picking a few that are going to be good at it, enthusiastic at it, or handing it over to a sales function, one way or the other. You can't just expect people that went into law to do those kind of things to be good at the sales part of the job.
So next I want to move on to how a law firm can differentiate their offering. Again, the danger of if you're a member of the public, if you're a client looking for a conveyancer, if you're seeing the same marketing, if you're seeing the same messages, the danger of that is you'll choose the cheapest firm in some eyes, because actually you can't differentiate the quality of service. So if I was a lawyer today, if I was looking at my marketing, how would you differentiate your service? I'll go to Claire first.
The first thing I would love to see, genuinely love to see, is we get rid of the word conveyancing. It's a Latin word, and unless you happen to have had it explained to you, your first entry to law is a Latin path, and it confuses a lot of people. So the lawyer that talks in plain language and makes their service easy to understand, and the pathway to onboarding easy to understand, is going to win more business than those who continue to look a little bit old-fashioned. But I do think people need to understand what you get when you pay more. What does that mean? Just saying I'm worth it isn't enough. And to talk about how many years experience you have in your field quite often would frighten away somebody who's just approaching their 30s, I would think, and think that that's somebody stuffy and old and they don't know who I am. So I think we have to talk about modern communication, we have to talk in words they understand, and we have to clearly identify what value they get from using your law firm.
Yep. And Simon?
Well, I think there's also, what I've seen in the time I've been doing this job is it's quite interesting that a lot of portals have been pushed towards people for, uploading and monitoring their progress of their case and that sort of thing. Obviously, the younger people have been the bigger market. The older people want to do things the way they've always done it. But actually, when you see and talk to younger people buying their first property, for instance, it's quite a scary event. So they'd rather have someone there actually talking them through it rather than just looking at a screen and hoping it's going to get everything right for them. And, they're uploading the right stuff to the right place. I think the human touch is still way more valuable than some firms believe it to be.
One thing I find is a lot of home movers who don't move very often, they get a sale agreed and they kind of think that's the hard bit done. Whereas we know it takes over 4 months really on average to get to the completion. And I don't think home movers necessarily understand that or are told that. Now, arguably the estate agent should be doing that, but I think the conveyancer can get on the front foot and perhaps use data a bit more to show actually this is how long it takes on average, but this is how quickly we can move. So you should choose us because we can move you quicker. I know you've got lots of data, Richard. Do you want to perhaps touch on that side?
Yes, I do. I mean, it is a very difficult position for a consumer or a client to make that purchasing decision. They've got little or no basis on which to generate it. They probably haven't instructed a conveyancer before, or if they have, it was a long time ago. It's an intangible service wrapped in Latin and all other pieces. So it's very difficult to get under the skin of it. So how can conveyancers help clients make a decision? And I think it's not about price. If you don't mention anything else but price, then it is going to be price. That's how the decision is going to be taken. But that just hides a multitude of sins. So it's important to move away from that and try and provide reassurance. I think it's really about reassurance. People want to know that they're not making a fool of themselves by instructing the conveyancer that they choose. And I think performance data. You're right, Paul. I mean, there's lots of it around. We have big tubs of it, and that talks to how well developed firms are in a particular geography. So are they do they do more conveyancing than anyone else locally, which does have a value. How fast are they moving their clients on average, stuff like that. So there's objective data that we can make available, and that's an important part of what we do. But the other side, I think I would just raise, and interested in your views on this, is client reviews. Because to my way of thinking, if you want to avoid being foolish, if you can see that 150 other people have used that service before and enjoyed it, then that's a massive tick in the box in terms of confidence. I don't know if there's a lot of culture around.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we speak to a lot of people who talk about reviews, and we obviously encourage clients to provide a review at the end of a transaction. I mean, we also encourage clients to just review with literally a sad, an even or a smiley face at various points of a transaction, so that if you get the grumpy or even the even face, you can make a call and talk to the client and find out what might not be quite right, and then that results at the end in hopefully a 5-star review on generally Trustpilot, something like that. I think it's very, very important these days.
I think people need to hear success stories, but I think the other thing, and something else I specialise in, is helping lawyers to deal with difficult people. And one of the things we have to do is we have to welcome feedback even when it isn't always 5-star. Because there's a danger that we only get 1-star and 5-star reviews and the mediocre don't get heard. For a law firm to improve and really understand what they could do better, they need to listen to when a client doesn't give them 9 out of 10 and gives them 7 out of 10. So I actually think the reviews are really powerful as a way to engage and to talk to the clients about their experience, but then to take those stories and share with the staff as well. So from a business development point of view, it's massive. But I think that this whole thing of people just saying, I want a 5-star review to tell me how brilliant I am, I think we also need some other reviews to tell us where there's room for improvement.
Yeah, agreed. We talked about don't differentiate on price. Just to play devil's advocate, one way to differentiate on price is actually to raise your fees. Do we think law firms charge enough? And actually, if by charging more and offering better service, as long as you do genuinely provide a better service and can communicate that, is that something to consider? And how would we go about that?
I think conveyancers typically, and generalising, are sort of paranoid intellectuals. So they see a competitor down the road drop their price by £10, and they drop their own price by £15, and it's ruinous. And I think the other problem with that is that there's a precedent for this. I mean, lawyers love precedents. During the COVID times, firms were swamped with work, and they, in order to turn the tap off, they raised their prices. And anecdotally, firms were extraordinarily surprised how many people, how slow that tap was to turn, because people still kept coming to them, even when they inflated their fees to levels that they wouldn't previously have entertained. Very sadly, I think, again, anecdotally, that those firms have dropped their fees again when the market's fallen back, which is a real shame, because they made some headway with that, and I think that could have been sustained. And there's definitely a price point in the market for someone who charges that premium rate.
I'm horrified at the race to the bottom philosophy. First of all, you've got to attract quality staff to come and do the job because it's challenging. And we've lost an awful lot of people that said this is a very difficult way to earn a living during COVID, and they won't come back. We've got to attract new people into the profession from school and from college, and to see this as a really good career. So the pay has got to be there for them to warrant the study and the application and the long hours. But more importantly, we have to get the public and the estate agents to value the fact that you pay for the length of the queue you joined, to have your email answered and your telephone call responded to. And if you decide that you're going to pay very little money, then you're part of a very long queue. And I know most people would pay for priority boarding or speedy boarding or any of the other things, and also for extra leg room and luggage room. So I think that people will pay if they understand what that differential will pay, and they're not frightened to pay a lot for it if they thought that would speed up their move.
Yeah, I mean, as a firm, we put prices up several times since mid-2020, the last time only June this year, and it's a case of listening to the lawyers as well. They're saying, we're not really earning what we should from doing these leasehold purchases, I guess, and the question is, well, what do you need to charge to be happy with what you're receiving in return, and set the prices somewhere around there. And it's always a case, I think, of telling people why they're paying more, getting that across, and the agents help. In my job, they really help with that. They'll say these guys are not the cheapest, but you will always know the person you're dealing with, and it makes the whole thing much more comfortable and much smoother.
I want to move on to what makes a law firm's sales operation successful. So Claire, I'm sure when you're speaking to law firms, are there any characteristics in a really successful firm that is really good at acquiring new business that you see?
Your sales team has to love people and want to succeed. It isn't something that they're forced to do, they want to do it. The second thing is they don't follow the box ticking form that most people have got, how much you're buying and selling for. They ask people what their plan is, and they talk to them about their move, and they reassure people that they're the right people to do that job. So it's a proper conversation. It is trained with people who can understand when customers are nervous or anxious about something and reassure them. But I do think that it's a dedicated job, and you can leave your technical people to do the technical and highly trained work of conveyancing and have your sales team focused on bringing people in, rolling out the red carpet and making them feel great before they start.
And so what you're saying, to interrupt, is you need a sales team. I mean,
You need a sales team.
You know, that's your starting point. You know, if there are plenty of firms out there who don't have sales teams, and it's a harassed fee earner who takes 5 minutes out of a complex case to try and give a quote to someone.
You're right, but also you're limiting the amount of new business by their capacity to even get off the phone to quote somebody else. And they will actually get to the stage mentally where they'll say, we've got enough work actually. And I've heard somebody say that when the marketing is still driving more people to call in, but there's a fee earner saying, I'm too busy to quote. So I do think that actually leaving fee earners to do the jobs that are instructed is the best way, and that the welcome and the onboarding and the quoting to be done by a dedicated team who deliver them people who are ready to go and are happy with the service from the get-go.
100% agree.
And what's the so I speak to some quite large law firms who don't have dedicated sales teams. What's the reluctance in some of these firms not to do it if we're all saying that's the right thing to do?
Can I be honest with you?
Yep.
Sometimes it's the ego of a particular expert fee earner who believes only they can discuss a complex estate or something like that, which is true, and there's nothing to stop a sales team referring a query to the expert fee earner. But for them to be basically on reception as well as doing the business, I don't know any expert business where they would put their expert to answer all the phones and deal with all the queries when we haven't actually decided to do any business. So I think we have to go back to keeping our experts highly trained, doing the job they've been trained to do, and at the front of house do a really good job for them.
And many experts you wouldn't want to put in front of clients.
Some people shouldn't have a phone. People laugh with me about that. But actually, no, sometimes it's ego, and sometimes it is a nervousness that putting a salesperson at the front of your operation will somehow diminish your professionalism, that people will feel that it's a pushy, salesy approach, which is not a nice word. But I have to say that I believe that if you want your business, you have to ask for new business. And if you make the customer feel great, there's nothing pushy or salesy about it.
Yeah. And clients want a genuine, friendly, warm reception, and they want to know that their business is desired.
Yes.
I'm also aware of some law firms who perhaps appreciate that there should be a separate kind of new business team, but can't kind of build that overnight. So. And I know there are some outsourcing options. Have we got any views on whether outsourcing the new business side of things is a good thing, a bad thing, somewhere in the middle, or depends on who you're outsourcing it to?
I don't think it should be the first option. I do think you should keep it in-house. I think a sales operation is vital, as we're saying, and sales operation doesn't equal youngsters with no experience and just racking through phone calls. It is the empathetic people that Claire and Simon are talking about that we need to have on board who can empathise with the caller. And take the time to help them through that process, and they will secure a lot more business than a harried fee earner.
I think that one point, certainly from my perspective as well, is an outsourced team is not going to have the relationships internally with the lawyers and the people that are going to do the work. And my experience of 7-8 years has definitely told me that that's absolutely essential. My first job was to really build those relationships with the people in the firm, the people that we wanted to take the cases on, because if you haven't got their support, you're on a back foot to start with. So you wouldn't get that with an external function, I don't think.
Yeah.
I think the only way you could make that work is initially they would have to come and be part of your business for a short while, and they would still be seen as an extension of your business. The parameters would have to be quite strict, with an understanding if any statements they make, because that's the other thing, is what they agree they can do could be a risk. Yeah. So, but I do actually think there's a place for onboarding with outsourcing. I do think that's a possibility, to do AML ID checks and to make sure forms are completed and sent back. I don't see why that couldn't be outsourced, but the actual quote instruct and the detail, I think that still should be in-house.
Okay, well that leads me on to kind of just the conveyancing sector in general, I suppose. So here at 20Convey, we're probably classed as a prop tech firm, and there's hundreds of them out there now, and lots seem to be entering the conveyancing space in areas such as onboarding and reducing completion timescales. There's more going on now than I think there ever has been, and actually for a law firm it's probably quite confusing because there's lots of solutions out there that promise the world, and knowing which of those to go to and which ones are going to work or save time is probably quite difficult. In the panel's view, what are the things really kind of shaking up the sector at the minute, or the things to be concentrating on if you were owning a law firm? We've got material information, which is an example.
I mean, you're right about the tech. It's that the pressure, it seems to be getting higher and higher. You probably see it, Simon, all the time.
Yeah, we get a lot of approaches weekly for various panels because they're telling agents they're going to take the stress of AML and ID checks and all that sort of stuff away from them. And then part of that is what they'll do is, get a conveyancing estimate. The battle is, there's not many panels that we want to be on or need to be on. So these businesses are having to offer a part service as well. Some are better than others, I think.
There's a huge advantage to the clients of using a digital onboarding solution, first and foremost because of security. Emailing your passport and utility bills using a Gmail address is probably not the smartest thing to do. I've seen some fantastic advances with certain law firms I've worked for in taking time that was taking up to 3 weeks to onboard a client down to 48 hours. So I think the digital route, if possible, is still the right route. I'm going to add a slightly hilarious point in this, and nobody seems to have the answer because it seems to be universal. With a digital ID, there's an awful lot of semi-naked people who keep cropping up. Have you come across this?
Oh, yes, might just be you, Claire.
No, I haven't seen these, you understand, because it would. But for some reason, people are very confused about what they should wear when they're having their ID taken on a photograph. Yeah. And there's an awful lot of law firms giggling because they've seen somebody in a state of somewhat semi-dress. So I don't know quite what's going on there. But certainly, I think that the logical thing to do is to say to people the safest way to do this is in a digital vault where you kind of almost walk into your own bank room to look at your own documents without having to send them across. And I think that way we're leaving the lawyer without that responsibility of working out whether a passport is genuine or not.
Yeah, we have a dedicated team that do only file openings and ID checks. They're obviously constantly busy. They're doing it for all departments, but without that team, I can't imagine how we'd actually function properly.
But I think there's a defensive reason that it's important for law firms to stay on board with this new tech at the front end or bring on clients. I mean, there's tech everywhere in the conveyancing process, but we're just talking about the front end, the onboarding piece. Because if conveyancers don't make themselves part of that agenda or that story, then they may not be part of it going forward. So I think as estate agents look for alternative sources for data that helps them do the material information piece, I think conveyancers, there's a massive opportunity, but equally, if it's not grasped, then I think the flip side of that is that they may find that there's the alternative suppliers of data develop who will then just perhaps circumvent the the role of the conveyancer, certainly at the start of the process. So it's important to stay in touch with that side.
Yeah, and going back to you mentioning about upfront information, there is a link here between the agent and the law firm. And it's working very successfully in certain parts of the country where the agent, as part of their onboarding process, takes them into the legal onboarding software. So the agent gets their consumer protection regulation forms, their property information questionnaires done at the same time that the client is completing the TA6, the ID checks and everything else, so that the client's only going through this once, but both companies have performed their due diligence. I think there's a huge advantage in doing that, and it also keeps the agent being aware of the importance of the upfront information. So it's a great partnership. It doesn't happen everywhere. There are still lots and lots of old school clients that may not feel comfortable doing that, and there's lots of old school lawyers and agents that also may be slow to come to the table, but I think that is the future, personally.
Yeah, well, I think as law firms, we've definitely got to be switched on to the possibility of business being funneled elsewhere by the people using a strategy well.
Yeah, and I think you've got to look at it from the client's point of view. If you're moving home, the average from sale agreed to completion is 120 days. It will be more if you've got a leasehold property. The total move time is over 200 days. And you look at other places in the world, it's possible to do this in a matter of weeks from listing your home to moving in. And I think, as frustrating as it might be with all the change, and no one really likes change, these have got to be positive things moving forward for the client, because the more upfront information, the more, if you do your searches earlier, there's tech and tools out there to look at chain information. I think this will only have a positive effect in moving people quicker. So I think it's good for the overall sector, I think.
It has to be. And I do think it takes away this dark art. There's an awful lot of, maybe I will and maybe I won't. Will I definitely move? I don't know. Do you know how long it's going to take? I don't know. Will they definitely have this? I don't know. Has they got a broadband? I don't know. How much is the council tax? I don't know. We have to take responsibility for the professional way in which we sell property. Agents have to accept the fact that when they take something on, they need to know about it, everything. The customer has to know they can't lie about it. Sometimes they'll lie to an agent and not to a lawyer. Sometimes they'll lie to the lawyer and not to the agent. But we have to get some consistency, one single source of truth. And so the technology is the heart of that. And if we can get that right, and we get the cooperation right, because it isn't there. There's so much mistrust at the moment and some mudslinging. And if we can get that put right and start respecting each other's professions, we could really help each other. And the only person that benefit will be the consumer. It'll be a great day.
Yeah, great. Well, on that, let's finish there. That's really enjoyed the discussion today. So thank you very much for your time, and hopefully have you back soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.